Good morning, everyone. I'm going to ride around the world.
I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike.
My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect.
How's it going, Sally?
Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going? Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me.
Freezing.
And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
We started things off fittingly up in the north at Mosport, but departing from the Canadian base of this series, we've gone all the way south to Florida now. And while this place won't be quite as harsh as round one, it's still known for rattling cars apart on its bumps. Let's see who can hold it together as we get ready to watch round two of the Radical Cup Canada Winter Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is IMSA driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Ryan Bauer, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Sebring has gotten a facelift from iRacing recently, so let's take a closer look at this historic circuit. Welcome to Sebring International Raceway. Home to the 12 Hours of Sebring, one of the most grueling tests in endurance racing, this is a track which has earned a fearsome reputation among drivers. The circuit itself is located on the southeastern edge of the city of Sebring, Florida, and was built out of Hendricks Army Airfield shortly after World War II. 3 layouts are currently in use, ranging from 1.7 to 3.7 miles in length. The longest course, which is perhaps the most well-known with it being the one used for the famed endurance race, shockingly still contains portions of the original airfield surface. It's this aspect which has become a signature feature of the track, making it extremely bumpy for racing. Sunset Bend in particular nearly shakes cars apart while they attempt to navigate the high-speed 180-degree corner. As you'd expect for the side of an airfield, there's nearly no elevation change over the course of a lap, but many of the curves are dramatically tall and unforgiving, daring drivers to glance them yet not hit them directly. Thankfully, places to pass are plentiful, including spots like the Hairpin and Cunningham. However, the many fast, sweeping turns creates a dilemma for car setup, since a vehicle that's made too stiff could wind up bottoming out on the onerous bumps. In the end, if you have the wherewithal to withstand the track's rough nature, you're likely to fare well. And since Florida fans almost always show up in huge numbers to witness this test of car and driver, you'll have plenty to impress at this legendary North American road course. Well, Joey, prototype racing is no stranger here, but this is certainly going to be an interesting challenge with these twitchy little cars.
They are a little bit smaller than the big prototypes we're used to seeing racing the long 12-hour races, but Sebring is always interesting, and like you said, bumps. You have to respect the bumps here at this racetrack, and always famous for getting really wide into turn one, no matter what cars are racing here. And then also another interesting point, turn 7, the sharp hairpin, big braking zone and a passing opportunity. Always slippery coming out of turn 16 at Le Mans. And then one of the most famous corners, turn 17. I'm sure we're going to see plenty of action today from the Radical cars going deep on the brakes and also really sending it over the bumps through that high speed turn 17 out onto the front straightaway.
So keep an eye on those drivers. They're going to have to earn their positions here tonight and earn the checkered flag. Now, as for the driver standings currently, up at the top, it is Arsenal, who didn't actually get either of the wins for the sprint or the feature. His best was a second, but it was his consistency that helped him, considering Buchanan, who is in second place, had the win and didn't earn any points in the sprint race itself. With only one round, it's still pretty tight up at the top, including a tie down there for 7th and 8th between Peterson and Salmon. So it is all to play for here at the start of the season. We also have a teams championship as well. And for that one, let's go to Joey to see where that one sits after the first round.
Yeah, looks like we have Top Gun Racing in a pretty good lead out there, 11 points. And then we've only had the one race, so everything's just getting settled here. Atomic Racing with a great showing, as well as Britannia iSports, Auto Electric Motorsports, and Project 2 rounding out the top 5. But Joe, with only one race under our belt, I'm really excited to see how of all these teams and competitors deal with Sebring and how much these team and driver standings are going to shake up after today.
Yes, and well, if you didn't get to see that first race, well, here's the race details, as they do have the same format each round. It's a 15-minute sprint, as I alluded to earlier, and then a 30-minute feature. There's no spare car, so if you get damage in either of those races, you're going to have to sit in pit lane and get that repaired. The good news is, for the 30-minute race, they do expect a one-stop race, so you can maybe try and get some of those repairs if you get some of them during your stop for that. There's a drive-through penalty at 20 incidents and a disqualification at 30 for each of the races. So you have to keep it on the black stuff and keep it clean. Now, we do want to mention that this is the official virtual counterpart to the real-life M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. So if you're a racer looking to get into one of these thrilling machines for a test day, a race weekend, or purchasing a car and join the series, contact Rob Burgess at Radical Canada at robert@radicalcanada.ca to get started. This is very cool that they have spooled up this winter series. Obviously, in Canada, a little bit harder to race in the winter, so this is their answer to that, to mimic the real thing as close as they can, with a few extra tracks that obviously aren't up in the north. But Bedard right now has the fastest time, Joey, so it doesn't matter if he's up in the cool north or down here in the muggy south. Looks like he's got a good handle on it.
Now, I'm up here in the Pacific Northwest, and it's been pretty rainy, but I tell you, if I'm up in Canada, Sebring, Florida, right now, it sounds wonderful. I would love to hop on the jet, go down and race some race cars, even if they're just virtual race cars. And like you mentioned, Scott Bedard currently provisional pole with a 153.69. I'm seeing that's almost 4/10 ahead of second place Andrew Hardman right now.
Got Hardman out there with a bit of work to do. He's a guy that's got plenty of experience here in the sim. And also, not only that, in the real world, he races RC cars and is actually a Canadian national champion from some years ago in that. So Andrew just loves all types of racing, it seems, including both real world and virtual and real world miniature. So as we watch James Carter work his way through Collier, one of the more narrow and twisty sections of this track. Really got to maximize so much about this, and also one of the places where those nasty curves are at the apex, Joey. That's what I want to see, is how these radicals will handle those curves in some of the more harsh spots.
I do have a lot of laps under my belt around this racetrack, and yes, very, very bumpy. The curbs can reach out and grab you, and like you said, these cars are a little bit smaller. They're a little bit twitchier. They're pretty low to the ground. And honestly, something in the winter that we see here at Sebring is more like the winter series, where they're running on the club circuit, but we're running on the big circuit here. And some of these cars, you know, they're making 380 torque, 425 horsepower out there with the big SR10 models. And it's pretty cool to see them jumping over these curbs, because they are very, very fast race cars out there.
Yeah, and some of these guys do race these SR10s in real life, and others race a different class that we unfortunately don't have in iRacing, called the SR3, which is slightly different. I think it's a lesser powered version very similar to this car, but still mighty quick as we continue to watch Hardman down into Jean Debian and the last 7 minutes of this qualifying session, and then it's off to the sprint race. But after the sprint race, the finishing order of that does have an effect on the feature, as they will invert the top 10. Everybody below that will start from where they finish. So you do want to have a decent finish within the top 10 to really put yourself in a good position for the feature. And Hardman having a little bit of a hello there from Joey Haynes, who was giving him a surprise.
Well, you know, I think turn 17 is always a great part of this racetrack as we watch another car come through here and you just see how bumpy it is. And you know, lost at their turn 17 exit. I think we're going to see that be a problem area all day, Joe. You mentioned the twitchiness of the race cars, and in the middle of turn 17, there's a series of bumps and one really big bump that'll throw you out there.
So this is Salmon across the line. Looks like that was an outlap, so he's starting a fast one here, coming down into turn 1. Let's watch and see if he can go quicker. That's a definite no for this one. Not just is that going to be slower through the grass, but it deletes your lap in iRacing if you go outside the track limits like that. So he pulls over, obviously, to try and take it back into pit lane and start that one over. In the meantime, as we watch on Dave Peterson in the 35, I'm showing him as not being on that quick a lap right here, so he might be setting himself up to get ready for the next one, as there's a bit of weaving in front of him from Cedric Ohayon. They're trying to prepare the tires, so we're going to go over to Horvath in the meantime to see if he can go any faster. He's just about hovering at an improvement on this lap to get higher than 13th.
Currently sitting in that position 13 provisionally, and rounding through this final sector through 16 here and out onto the back straight. Something that's really tricky about Sebring, that turn 16, you saw the car really wiggle on corner exit. It's just barely over crest, it's just barely off camber, and it's always really slippery out there. No matter how you approach that corner, you're always searching for grip.
I've always found it tough to try and nail it right. Wow, look at him slide through Sunset Bend. He holds on to it. He's still showing it's slightly faster, but I'm guessing his exit's going to put paid to that as he crosses the line. And fortunately, the lap was also deleted, so he must have gone beyond the track limits at some point. It would have been spectacular if it would have counted, but it was all for naught in the end. And these are pretty impressive cars. I actually got to witness them this summer in real life as Horvath is going to go for a spin there through turn 3. I got to see them in person at Road America, and they're pretty frightening. They're extremely loud, I can tell you that, and the speeds at which they go around these circuits, considering these are supposed to be kind of your gentleman driver cars, your kind of entry to racing, they're pretty serious race cars.
Yeah, Joe, they definitely are, and we're seeing the SR10 model, which is a very serious car, but I think that's one great thing that Radical has is, you mentioned it earlier, they have the SR3 class, which is essentially the same chassis. You're getting the same handling characteristics, but your drivetrain package, your engine package is less, so you're not having the giant V8 in the back. It's more of a 4-cylinder motor that usually is in the smaller cars, and think of it kind of like a ladder series. You start with the car that has all of the potential, but not necessarily the top speed, and then they have some steps that you can advance up into faster cars.
Exactly, and going to make a comparison that I'm not sure would mean as much to some of the viewers, but just does kind of remind me of my days of skateboarding over the many years that you're kind of taught to skate to your ability. So you don't get in too deep. You start with the little stuff, and yeah, they're not necessarily little cars, but the SR3 is a good stepping stone to get up to these beastly machines, as Joseph Yang comes through with an improvement up to 5th in the number 55 appropriately, and has less than a tenth to make up to get by Michael Broomhead, who's been spearheading this virtual series. We'll see if he can go by the league organizer here in the next couple minutes. Instead, we're going to check back with Peterson once again.
And right now along board, Dave Peterson right now actually tracking pretty good this lap that we're riding along with here. This is into one of these big brake zones. Got to keep it good over these bumps. Keep the car driver's left here as you round over this sweeping curb. And then this is one of the most tricky corners. Hard on the brakes, but you got to carry the apex speed. It's so blind there on exit. And looks like he does a pretty good job. And he's still tracking to the good this lap.
Yeah, I'm showing him as having at least a minor improvement here as he now comes down into Jean Dambien, a little wide at the first apex, tries to open up the entry here into Le Mans onto the Ulmann straights, and does a good job of carrying that momentum out onto this long run. You certainly need it through here up to Sunset Bend, but you need the guts through Sunset Bend to try and hold on there. So as he chucks it in, the Mid-South driver looks like he's got better grip than what we saw from Horvath a little bit earlier. This is going to be close on whether or not he's quicker than that 55 flat. 7th place, stays 7th place as he does not improve.
And just fractions of a second off of his fastest lap here. And here comes Joseph Yang around turn 17. Check on his lap here, see if he is able to advance at all. Looks like he is going to stay there in the 5th position. Once again, less than a 1/10 of a second off of his fast time.
Looks like with the 20-minute qualifying, it's proving to be pretty tough to try and find some speed here at the end. It's also pretty hot for this being, well, no, I guess it is set in September, it appears. But it's currently 115 Fahrenheit on the track surface. So it's a little toasty down there, and the driver is probably lacking some grip.
Yeah, I'm noticing that I'm seeing 75-degree ambient temperature Fahrenheit and then 115 on the track. And looks like we got some pretty hot asphalt out there at Sebring today.
And it looks like qualifying is over, though. So our grid is set, and Scott Bedard will be on the pole for this sprint race. Andrew Hardman will be second, as Joey Haynes will start from 3rd today. It'll be Michael Broomhead who holds on to that outside second row. Joseph Yang did wind up in 5th, and John Benualid will start from 6th. After that, Dave Peterson will be P7. Then it's Spencer Todd in the 8th position, followed by Patrick Arsenault on the inside of row 5, and Keith Carter will begin from 5th.
There in the 11th spot, we have Christian Jasper, followed up with James Doherty, Daniel Salmon there in the 13th position, Nick Horvath 14th, Alex Federico there rounding out the top 15. In the 16th spot, we have Mark Boyd, followed up with James Carter, our POV cam today. Steven Sutherland in 18th place, Cedric Ohayon 19th, and Robert Burgess in the 20th position.
Guillaume Huard and Phil Beans are two that did not set times, but I do not see Guillaume in the session right now, so we might only have 21 starters. A note about Robert Burgess, he's actually the head of Radical Canada, so he is a big player, obviously, with these cars out there, and wanted to come and play along with all of his various friends who compete up there, and has joined us today. So big welcome to Robert. We'll see how he fares from 20th on the grid as they line up behind the pace car. 15 minutes on this one, and the last time out, track position was kind of important in that shorter race, Joey. But at this track, I would think that there are passing opportunities. So how critical is it in such a short race to be up at the front?
Yes, I agree. There are passing opportunities, but traditionally Sebring funnels down to single file pretty quickly. So I would say if I'm outside of the top 10, I'm worried about my track position. I want to move forward as quickly as I can, because given only 15 minutes, if you get buried, it's going to be tough kind of climbing up that hill.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have to make some aggressive moves, no doubt, because you can't really sit around waiting at the back for things to happen. Or you have to just really hope for some luck and maybe some good reflexes to maybe avoid some wrecks throughout it. And as they take off, you can see they all start to try and get the tires ready and prepare them. We haven't seen a drop in temperature, though, so I don't think they should need to weave too much, as even though it's going to be a short race, I don't think they want to overheat those tires too much in the early stages and keep them in good condition. This track, obviously, as I said, had a nice facelift. The bridge, one of those things that has recently been prettied up here in iRacing and brought up to more recent spec. Looks spectacular right here. And then down into the hairpin, well, we can't see it in this shot. I'm not sure if we have a shot, but the hotel was also given a lot of visual improvements.
Oh, the old classic Chateau Elan over there. I think that's owned by Don Panos and the Panos family. They have another one up at Road Atlanta as well. If you guys are looking for a nice winery and also a good place to stay at a racetrack, those are always great.
Yeah, I'd love to get to stay there. I'm a little jealous of one of our commentators here on the channel, DJ Clark. He got to call a race for the SRO series and got to stay in that hotel right by the track. So maybe someday, it's on my bucket list for sure, as we watch them come down to Cunningham, one of the places we could see passes happen. But I've seen side by side through this part in Cunningham, and Joey, usually it doesn't seem to go all that well.
Like I said, this racetrack really funnels down. I know that there's a lot of passing opportunities, but these passing opportunities kind of have to develop around this racetrack. With that said, turn 1 at Sebring allows for 5+ wide. So if the front leaders don't get after it on the start, I think that could be our opportunity for some of these guys to really jump up with aggressive moves.
No doubt about that. And like I said, with it being so short, will we see some aggressiveness at the start to try and get that track position, get themselves ahead? And those who are fighting for potential championships, what will we see out of them? Unfortunately, no Zach Buchanan here today, but we do have Patrick, who is unfortunately mired down in 9th after the qualifying here for the sprint race. But Patrick, remember, didn't have the greatest of finishes in the sprint and had to go for 2nd in the feature. So maybe we'll see similar today, where he kind of gets himself in a decent enough position in the sprint race and then winds up really performing over the long term. So let's see how it all shakes out. The Porsche pace car is now leading them up to Sunset Bend. So he's going to be ducking away pretty quickly, and Bedard is going to have control of the field from here. Can he convert this to a victory today, as he was not able to back at Mosport? Green flag is out, and some people are trying to jump the start in the back. Some managed to make good on it, others not so much, and that means they're going to fan out to 3 wide up into the first turn, including a try for the lead from Joey Haynes. And in fact, he's going to get there as they're 4 wide coming off the turn. Somehow they make it out of there without a wreck.
I don't know how we haven't had cars turned around. We're still 3 wide going into this turn 3, 4, 5 complex. Looks like they're calming down to 2 wide, but the leaders up front, the top 3, are single file scooting away.
James Doherty, unfortunately, is going to get turned a little bit, but he gets it pointed back forward. I'm not sure how damaged the car is, though, in the process. Side by side for 4th place between Keith Carter and Scott Bedard, who was our pole sitter. That's how far he's fallen as he almost squeezes his rival off the track behind them. I also see, it looks like John in the 8 and Michael Broomhead and the 00 have gone off. So we are getting a few issues here at the start of this race, but it could have been a lot worse. Everybody's keeping their heads up, and now Carter gets spun around, unfortunately, and takes a few with him.
Looks like, yeah, Jasper's involved in that, as well as Joseph Yang, Keith Carter. These guys were all kind of running in that 4th to 6th place position, and 3 cars ultimately infected in that. But Joe, I want to point out our 2nd place car, the number 925, Patrick Arsenault. He started 7th place. He's made his way all the way up to 2nd, and that all happened in the first turn.
Yeah, and as his nickname implies, with the team, with Maverick, he's certainly racing like Tom Cruise character seems to fly. He is up onto the podium very, very early. Hardman is behind him as we watch from his perspective. Just takes a little bit of a look, whoa, and really sends it in deep. Can he actually make this one stick? He does. I'm kind of amazed at that.
I've been watching these cars on this outlap, and I think a lot of them are still struggling to get the tire temperature up. But look at this. This is going to be side by side between Hardman and Arsenault going into one. Looks like Hardman's going to keep it, but oh my gosh, Scott Bedard, what a closing rate in turn one from 4th place.
Trying to make up for losing those positions early on, and is already caught up to the podium sitters as we race on board with the Canadian just behind Patrick Arsenault as they come out of turn 5 into Big Bend. This is behind Joey Haynes, who really would like them to keep that battling up because it's allowed him just over a second lead, but it does seem like they might have pace on them considering they haven't lost more with all this back and forth.
I agree with you. I'm pretty impressed at how close the racing has stayed between this top 4, but yeah, looks like Scott Bedard definitely has pace on Patrick Arsenault right now, and given that he was our pole sitter, I would expect him to try to make this move sooner than later, given this is the 15-minute sprint.
Yeah, I don't imagine he's going to rest on his laurels in this situation, and he's got 2 directly in front of him. I think we had some more issues with Steven Sutherland and Cedric Ohayon. Not exactly sure what happened, but it looked like they had an issue in the hairpin. So we come through Bishop and into Jean Debian once again, and now it does appear that Hardman is gaining. He's cut 2/10 into Joey Haynes on this lap already.
You're right. It looks like second place is starting to close it up. It honestly looks like these top 4 runners are all kind of even down the back straightaway right now, all kind of separated by about 0.8 of a second. But going into turn 17, this is always tricky given these cars and the bumps. And look at that, Patrick Arsenault once again very wide there in 17.
Yeah, and that's going to open the door a little bit for Bedard to maybe take a look. We'll see if Patrick can fend him off into the first corner. Does look like it's a decent enough exit for the 925. And whoa, there it goes. Holy cow! Absolutely sends it, and maybe a little too hard. Bedard is off into the grass, and Patrick takes the spot back.
I was just looking up Scott Bedard, and it looks like he's a motorcycle racer, a good club racer, and I think we're seeing some of that aggression. Look at him going to turn 1 with his hair on fire right here.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the bravery makes sense because you have to have some serious stones to get on a 2-wheeled vehicle and try and race competitively. So, unfortunately, it did not pay with a position, but at least he's still behind Patrick and could maybe try and get in there.
He got really deep into turn 5 right there as well, locked him up. He's very confident on the brakes, but I think he just needs to back it up a little bit, focus on that corner exit, and he should be able to drive around that 925 machine in front of him.
Had 3 drivers in turn 3 come together, Carter, Beans, and Boyd. Unfortunately, sounds like something out of a children's rhyme as they come around and keep going afterwards. So at least the cars weren't that damaged, and were able to at least stick with it for the time being. This has been a frantic sprint race, which I guess is appropriate as we once again look at the fight for 3rd position. Arsenault with a little bit of a mistake, and this time Bedard is going to try and sit it a little bit more speculative, and this time it works, but now Patrick has the draft on him.
You mentioned at the draft, and these cars actually punch a pretty big hole with the open cockpit, but seems like Patrick is totally fine to hang on to 4th place right here. Maybe let Scott Bedard in front of him and take some notes, see where he's faster and see where he can get faster himself.
On to the front stretch. All this back and forth has now really cost them, as it's about 3.5 seconds up to Hardman, who is catching Haynes. So we'll keep an eye on that if he starts to attack for the lead. But certainly been a little bit more exciting down here for the final step on the podium, and behind them as well. That's Peterson, Salmon, and Horvath that's starting to approach. So they really can't keep messing around too much like this.
I love these sprint race formats, and one other thing to remember is that isn't there a top 10 invert from these finishing results in the sprint race format? So we're going to see even more action throughout the night, no matter how these guys finish in this first one.
There is indeed. And James Doherty, who started in 12th position, is the one sitting in 10th who will get the pole if it stays as is. I'm sure he's pretty thrilled about that because it'll give him a definite advantage when we get to the feature race. This is back up to the lead. Joey Haynes with that incredible move at the start of the race to move from 3rd to 1st. To his credit, hasn't given this up yet, despite Hardman running him down.
No, and I'm looking at his lap times. He's been very consistent. His last lap, a 155.1, which was also his fastest lap of the race so far. The only problem, Joe, that second place car, that number 3, Andrew Hardman, his last lap, 154.5, over half a second faster than our leader.
This is going to take some really good defense from Joey Haynes. Well, hopefully, at least if you're a fan of him, the aero wash will help him out there. But if you're a fan of Hardman, you're going to get frustrated potentially having to sit behind this green and black machine. We've now hit the halfway point of the race, and they come across the line to now start lap 5. It's kind of, it doesn't feel like it's only been 5 laps. We've had so much happen already.
You know, I got to agree with you from your pre-race assessment, Joe. Sebring is definitely making a great racetrack with lots of passing opportunities, and I'm really impressed with the pressure that Andrew Hardman has been able to apply with Joey Haynes right here. He's just underneath the rear wing of our leader.
So Hardman, who still sits within 0.2 of a second. Any closer than this, I got to think that he'll have a good shot at the pass. In fact, he shows himself in the mirrors that time, but doesn't seem to have the guts to try and chuck it in this time. We've already seen Bedard try that. Actually, now that Bedard has passed, he's been cutting in. And in fact, last lap was a 54.1. That was his personal best. Hardman with a 54.8. Wow, 0.7 faster last time.
Yeah, they're going to have to watch out for Bedard, but given that there's only maybe a few minutes, about 5 minutes left or so in this race, I think that Bedard will become a factor. But one thing that we noticed from Scott when he was trying to pass the 925, catching and passing are 2 totally different things in this machine.
Certainly seems like it. And we jump a little bit farther back to Nick Horvath, who has now been able to overtake Spencer Todd, and Salmon just sits in front of him with a top 5. Horvath is up from 14th. Salmon is up from 13th. It has been quite the climb from both of them. 8 positions respectively that they've been able to make up in such short time here.
Really impressive run. You're right. 13th, 14th on the starting grid, up into the top 5 for Daniel Salmon and Nick Horvath, just right on the bumper. And I don't want to forget our lead battle here, because Hardman continues to hound the back of Joey Haynes. And something that I've been looking up here, really need to see the crossover between the real world and the virtual world, because both of our front 2 actually have some real world experience between go-karts, and I'm seeing actually some F3 open wheel experience as well out there.
When it looks like Horvath is going to cut back underneath, try and see if he can re-overtake Todd, who managed to get by in the first corner. Oh, he starts to lose control, just narrowly avoiding the accident. Great awareness from Spencer Todd to stay out of that. And the Evolve SimSport guys once again show why they are among the best out here on iRacing.
It just looked like Nick Horvath was hard on the brakes, maybe had a little bit too much rear brake bias in, or maybe just had a little bit too much weight on the nose as he was trying to turn in, and around it went on him.
Ooh, back to the leaders, though. That time, Hardman was taking a little bit more of a serious look down into Cunningham. In fact, he was within 1/10 of a second. So, yeah, he's starting to really poke and prod and see what he can do on Joey Haynes in these last 4 minutes. And that'll actually, yeah, we're only going to be 2 to go next time at the line, I believe.
Given that these cars are running just shy of 2-minute lap times, yeah, I agree. We're going to be having 2 laps to go, which means the time is running out. And I mentioned the time because that limits the amount of moves and passing opportunities that these guys are going to have.
Not a great exit onto the Ullman Straight, though, there from Hardman. He's got to really work that one a little better. So we come back to James Carter, who sits well down in 18th, unfortunately. Remember, he was involved in one of those incidents earlier, but has not visited pit lane, so the car wasn't damaged enough that he needed to come and take repairs. He's stuck with it. This is a little closer than it was on the backstretch, so I wonder if the slipstream helping out Joey Haynes along these long straights, or helping Hardman, I should say. And, oh, look at him start to gain here coming through turn 1, but the bumps shake him loose.
Such a tricky turn 1. It's very, very fast, and the level of commitment going in is super high, but this is also a very important corner. Turn 4, heading out onto this bending straightaway, heading up into a possible braking passing zone into turn 7 here.
By the way, Doherty still sits as our potential pole sitter for the feature, with Broomhead 10 seconds behind, so it's looking good for James right now. And as they come through into Cunningham once again, our leaders are still just tantalizingly close, but Hardman does not go for it this time. He's going to have about a lap and a half to try and make this move. And I wonder if he's starting to feel the effects of that aero wash, because it does look like the car is sliding around. Yeah, man, look at him lose off that corner.
Absolutely. It's definitely affecting him. And one thing that we've seen all race so far, Joe, is he's hung out right there in kind of that 7/10 of a second, maybe 8/10 of a second. He's able to close it up a little bit, but then when they get into these twisting corner sections, that aero wash definitely affects him.
Getting back on board, and yeah, this is the visual difference. Remember how close he was through the first corner? Look how far away that Evolve SimSport car is now. So the Britannia iSports driver has really got to put his foot down, and once again starts to gain a little bit through the corners onto the front stretch. Two very different lines between the cars around Sunset Bend as the white flag waves, and the race for the lead is not over.
Only about half a second separating these two right now, but Andrew Hardman with a really good run through turn 1 into this technical turn 3, 4, 5 complex. We'll see if he can close on the leader even more.
Ooh, behind them, once again, back and forth between Todd and Salmon. Looks like Todd's going to get that position, and it was Horvath that they were racing with before, but remember, he had his spin, so he is nowhere to be seen amongst them. Back up to the battle for the lead, though. There was another little look from Hardman. Wonder if desperation's starting to get into it a little bit. Remember, Hardman is looking to try and make up for a poor performance at last race. He was down in 13th in the points coming into this one. He doesn't want to throw away this second place in the sprint, and he will be regrid a little bit farther back. He'll restart 9th in the feature itself. So he's going to have to fight through once again. A second place is nothing to scoff at here.
No, and I noticed that our leader had a little bit of a lockup going into turn 7, and then also Andrew Hardman gave him another little fake going into that brake zone, but I think he's a little bit too far away. We'll see if he can close through this slippery section of kind of 14, 15, 16 here, because he's only got one more real passing opportunity going into 17 off of the back straight.
Oh, but he slides the car yet again, and the 99, I don't think, has the momentum to try and do anything crazy here at the last corner. He needs a mistake from Joey Haynes to really get this position. I meant the 3 doesn't have the speed to try anything up here. So the 99, as he exits the final corner with a nice smooth apply of the throttle, is going to take the win in the sprint race today. Hardman follows him home, and Bedard will have to settle for 3rd after starting from pole. Arsenault managed to climb back into 4th position as he started a little bit farther back. Todd is going to get 5th, and Salmon will wind up in the 6th spot as they continue to streak across. Doherty actually went up to 9th, as Peterson will start from the pole in the next race. They're finishing 10th today, and the rest behind them looks like they will not be regrid here. So we are not going to see all of them get to the finish, because it looks like Phil Beans was our only DNF here today. Ooh, but we still got a battle to the line coming along, as we got a side-by-side between Ohio and Boyd, but Boyd outbrakes him coming into the final turn. This is for 16th. As long as he can take it off the corner, he should be good. And yes, indeed, Mark Boyd takes the number 12 car out to 16th place. Unfortunately, we did see a wreck from Carter. I think that was from James Carter that we just saw, unfortunately, but this is our results from the sprint race of today. Joey Haynes is your winner, and Andrew Hardman winds up in 2nd. Then in 3rd, it is Scott Bedard. and it is 12 points for a win in this series for the sprint, as opposed to 25 for a win in the feature. So it offers a little bit less, but it's still a good chunk of change. Arsenault is going to finish 4th, as Spencer Todd is 5th. After that, it's Daniel Salmon in 6th position, followed by Nick Horvath, P7. Alex Fedorko will finish 8th today, as James Doherty manages to jump up 1 in the last lap to finish 9th. And Dave Peterson will be regrid as your pole sitter from 10th. Joey?
Yeah, and I think some of these competitors in 11th on back are looking to have a better race. Joseph Yang there in the 11th spot. Unfortunately, it started 5th, so he's going to look forward to moving forward, as well as Michael Broomhead there in the 12th position. Christian Jasper finishing 13th in the sprint race. John Bugnol finishing in the 14th place there. Keith Carter 15th. Mark Boyd in the 16th place. Cedric Ohayon, we saw that little battle there at the end. James Carter in the 18th spot. Steven Sutherland and Robert Burgess rounding out the top 20, just 1 lap down.
They get a short break here before they head off into the feature race. 30 minutes. Remember, the top 10 will be inverted, and they will have a scheduled pit stop for fuel to try and get to the end. So expect that to play a part. But now that they've had a chance to go out and actually see everybody in action, what's your biggest takeaway if you were in that sprint race, Joey? What lessons did you learn?
I learned that these cars are pretty twitchy on the brakes, especially when you have them in the first lap or two when they're bunched up like that. I see a lot of aggressive moves on the brake. I don't know if it's temperatures aren't up yet, or these cars are just twitchy over the bumps and they have a lot of rear brake bias, but it seems like those first couple laps are very busy with people making huge lunges in some of these braking opportunities.
Absolutely. And with a little bit more time, will that make them make fewer lunges, or is everybody going to do like we saw and go 4 wide into the first corner at the very first opportunity? So 3 minutes left to try and do what they can from here to take any more practice.
Now, we saw Patrick Arsenault make that huge move into turn 1 on lap 1, and I think that with some of these faster cars, meaning, our race winner starting in the 10th place, I think we're going to see a lot of the same. We'll see if cooler heads prevail, or if we're going to see more of potentially 5+ wide into turn 1 at Sebring.
So the little weaving back and forth from Joseph Yang, that's how you see on your screen there. Just getting himself around. In fact, they might only be able to get 1 lap in here in these 5 minutes, so it's going to be limited practice time for sure. Boyd, who was 3rd in the points and actually took a 3rd place in the feature last time, is going to be starting from well back in this one, all the way in 16th. So he's got some work to do in this one. In fact, I don't think he even scored points in that first race. That's really going to put him under the gun to try and perform in the feature to make up for that loss. And again, a quick reminder for our viewers, if you're watching this and if you are inclined to go racing in the real world, you actually can, as this is the official virtual counterpart of the real-life M-Zone Radical Cup Canada. And if you're a racer looking to get into one of these thrilling machines for a test day, a race weekend, or purchase a car and join the series, contact Rob Burgess of Radical Racing at Radical Racing Canada, or Radical Canada, excuse me, radicalcanada.ca to get started. Robert, obviously we saw, didn't finish too high up last time, wound up 20th and a lap down, but he did finish the race at least and kept with it. It is a little bit of a different thing going between the sim and the real world, and just because you're fast in the real world, we've seen, Joey, doesn't mean you're necessarily fast in the sim.
It's a totally different thing. Now, the concepts are the same and the applications are the same, and that's why the sim is so great. But if you come from the real world and just try to hop into the sim, it doesn't usually go that smoothly, because you have to understand the sim world. It is not the real world, and it is our rendering of the real version. But Joe, I'm looking at here what Robert offers in all this Radical Canada stuff, and it's pretty cool. I come from the real world of racing, and Arrive and Drive is one of these things that we do, and everything that they offer here, from being able to buy the race car, they actually can provide trackside support. You can do arrive and drive, which is the easiest way to think about it. It's a rental car. You go, you sign up, you pay your fee, you arrive at the racetrack, you drive this awesome race car around this fantastic racetrack, and then you leave at the end of the day. They also provide everything from storage and rentals as well. It's really a whole package that he's got under his umbrella there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that sounds like as close as you can get to like the sim experience translating to real life. There is, you have so little to worry about. It sounds fantastic. So hopefully we'll see some people who take up that offer. Unfortunately, I'm not quite close enough to Canada to hop in on that, but if you are, I definitely encourage you to do so. And just about a couple seconds left to go before we head off to the feature session. And we'll be reading the grid here momentarily of our 21 drivers, possibly 20, because I see Phil Beans is no longer in the session either. So he must have taken off a little bit early, unfortunately, might have had other obligations.
Well, you know that beans and salmon don't always mix on the same dinner plate.
Wow. Now you have me thinking about that, and I'm not a fan of beans, so that just already doesn't sound appetizing to me. Anyways, let's go through the starting order. Dave Peterson regrid onto the pole as James Doherty will start from second place. Alex Federico is third as Nick Horvath is fourth position. Daniel Salmon will be P5, followed by Spencer Todd in the sixth spot. Patrick Arsenault will be P7. You've got Scott Bedard in eighth spot. Then on the inside of the fifth row, it's going to be Andrew Hardman with the winner, Joey Haynes, starting from 10th.
And from 11th on, these guys actually have those same finishing spots and grid spots. Joseph Yang in the 11th position, Michael Broomhead there in 12th, Christian Jasper in the 13th spot, John Benulid in the 14th, Keith Carter rounding out the top 15 there, Mark Boyd, 16th position, Cedric Ohayon there in 17th, James Carter in the 18th position, Steven Sutherland in 19th, and Robert Burgess there rounding out the top 20. And like you said, I think it's just Phil Beans there in the 21st spot.
Yep, both of them appear to have not gridded, so it's only going to be 20 cars versus the 21 we saw in the sprint race. And temperatures have continued to rise here. It is middle of the day, so not too shocking. That's a little past 1:30 in the afternoon, virtual standard time. And the track temperatures have now gone from 114 to 118 Fahrenheit. And they will continue to have to watch out for the rubber underneath them, especially because it did seem to affect them even in only 15 minutes. Joey, we watched Hardman slip and slide more and more as the race went on. So a 30-minute race, I wonder if it would pay dividends to maybe just take it easy in the first half of the race.
Especially with how many lockups I saw on the brakes, that definitely wears the tires more. And yeah, the best way to describe the track temperature getting warmer is just it gets slipperier and slipperier. Just like when you start to sweat out there, that racetrack gets really hot, and when you just start to abuse it, it doesn't have the grip when you've got those prime temperatures.
So, got to have your wits about you and make sure that you make right decisions in this one, because they will have consequences down the line, no doubt. So they continue to follow behind the pace car. This is only the second of 10 races that they're doing for this winter season. And obviously taking it between 2022 and 2023 to kind of entertain themselves while they can't exactly get out there during the cold winter of Canada. Down through Cunningham and Collier once again into Tower Corner. This is one of those tracks that I'm really glad that they do have names for most of the corners, because it's been around long enough to pick them up. And honestly, really cool names for a lot of these. Yes, there's a few that are named after drivers that sometimes that sees a lot of repeats of corners between places, but they're not really drivers that I've seen brought up. Like names like Jean Debienne and Cunningham are not ones that crop up at most tracks.
Well, it's really interesting being in this commentary world now, Joe, because I'm used to seeing a track map and numbers and filling it out pre and post session, and then I'm also used to seeing the numbers on the steering wheel when I'm inside the race car. So learning the names is something totally new for me.
As a big nerd of racing, I've just been learning them over the years, and actually my family and my peers will rib me about it because I do have quite an encyclopedia, not to toot my own horn about some of these, but it does come in handy when talking trivia. I can say that much, and doing this job at least as they come up to complete the lap and up to this final corner. Peterson now gets the unenviable task of trying to hold back a lot of faster drivers here from the start. And he gridded up in 7th from the previous one. So he at least has some decent pace. And he's not too high up from where he began last time. But it's still going to take some great defense as the green flag is out. And a couple drivers once again in the background getting some decent jumps. Peterson looking like he's okay, but it's a very good run from Horvath, who's going to try and poke his nose down to the inside, very similar to what Haynes did on the first lap last time, but he's going to go all the way out into the grass, so it's not going to pay dividends. Peterson will get back to the lead, but Federico now gives a try down into turn 3, and 3 cars come together. Unfortunately, more of them piling in. We have an absolute wreck, a mess on the outside of turn 3 with about 6 cars finding themselves facing the wrong way.
Haynes to the lead. Our leader from race 1 finds himself on the point right now, but Joseph Yang is taking a look down the inside. First lap down into hairpin. This all just fell into Joey Haynes' lap. I was watching him. He was about 5th or 6th place, and then everybody just wrecked in front of him, and he's got clear track right now.
There's always that old racing adage that you can't win the race in turn 1, lap 1, but you can always throw it away. This time it took until turn 3, and plenty of drivers dropped the ball on that one. There's a little defense in the background from Hardman, who has managed to work his way up into 3rd in this, and that's Yang sitting in 2nd place. Also, Benelid has got himself in 4th with Bedard back into P5. So a few of the quick drivers have taken advantage of that little chaos that we saw to try and just grab up positions very quickly. Now, can they make some legitimate overtakes getting by some of these drivers, as it looks like John in number 8 is a bit under threat.
Bedard is taking a look down the back straightaway, around John Benwilid. It looks like he's got the position down into turn 17, as well as our leaders. Looks like actually Hardman's going to take a look underneath Joseph Yang coming out of turn 17.
Hardman wants to get that win that slipped through his fingers, I think, but he doesn't have the speed off of the final turn. Yang has the inside. He's awful shallow, though. He gives a lot of room, and that might actually help him get the pass done. Will Hardman take advantage enough? Bedard wants to, but he's plugged up, and indeed, there it is. That's going to be 2nd place for Hardman.
This is bad news for the rest of the field because Joey Haynes, sprint race winner, currently leading. Andrew Hardman, 2nd place in the sprint finish. He's currently 2nd place. And then Scott Bedard, he was our pole sitter originally. He's currently in 4th place, applying pressure to Joseph Yang. It certainly looks like we've got the fastest 4 cars up front right now.
History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme sometimes. So it seems like we've got everything all over again back at the front, but it's still a long race. Now, I wonder if we could take a look at the replay of that incident. And I believe Dave Peterson, our pole sitter, was involved, but it was him contacting somebody else, and then there was a spinner in front of him. I didn't quite see who it was exactly. We'll see if we can unravel it once we see the replay, but I do know that Peterson was among the first to find himself going around.
Yeah, I'm trying to recollect there. I think Horvath was originally our pole sitter, and he went off wide in turn 1, and that kind of collected all of these cars up behind. But look at Sebring turn 1. There's 5, 6 wide there, and there we see Horvath really dive it down to the inside, and then it's over under from here.
So there is another car. I'm trying to make out the number there. Is that the 17, I think? Spins in front of
Joe, it's actually these front 2 lead cars spin on their own. They both got in too deep. They both had rear lockup. And then there was more contact back there in third, fourth, fifth place. We're going to ride on board with Joey Haynes right here, our current leader. It's all going to unfold right in front of him.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's like a video game. It is, well, I mean, I say that, but you know what I mean. It's just zipping past cars. It's like he's playing some arcade game there and just blasting past them one after another as they all wreck around him. And then Haynes just looks around and wonders where everybody went.
Now, if I'm Joey Haynes, after this race, now hang on, Scott Bedard's taking a look around Joseph Yang right now going into the hairpin. Doesn't look like he's got any place to go. But if I'm Joey Haynes, I am praying to the racing god later saying thank you so much for that, because usually when dominoes fall, it's not the good way.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to get caught up in that, as he's once again going to try and make a move on Yang, but it almost looks like Joseph is going to give this one up. A little deep there for Bedard. Boy, Scott really loves to make those wild moves deep into the corner. This time it pays dividends at least.
I think that, yeah, he's very aggressive. Oh, no, and he's going to run wide there. That's one of the most technical corners on the racetrack, and all that hard work given up to Joseph Yang, and also looks like John Benwillet is going to go by him as well.
Yeah, he's now up into fourth, so Scott's got to try and not only try and go back past Joseph Yang, but also John Benwillet there in fourth. And watch out for Michael Broomhead, who's trying to catch up.
Scott Bedard is in the slipstream now of that number 8 car, and going to hop back. This is 16th place. James Doherty right now looking at the back of Steven Sutherland's car around turn 16 and onto the back straightaway.
Yeah, he started in second place, and he didn't hold on to that as well as he hoped. And there goes Bedard. He got past Benwillet pretty quickly, and I think Broomhead is going to take advantage of this slowed up John. And he's got the inside into the first corner. Yeah, a little bit of a bob out of the way there from the number 8 car, as he didn't want to cause an incident. Very wide from Broomhead, but he keeps it together despite dipping 2 wheels into the dirt.
It can be so tricky, though, when you get your tires dirty into that brake zone. You see Benwillet really hound the back of Broomhead now, though. Doesn't look like John got the exit he needed, though, and looks like the 00 machine is going to secure that 5th place.
So Broomhead, who only managed 12th in the sprint, has already worked his way up 7 spots here in the feature, and looks like he's hungry for more as we once again go to Hardman versus Haynes up into Cunningham. And it is still looking incredibly similar to the last race, in which Andrew keeps hovering around the back end of the 99, but not actually making any passes.
Yeah, I've been watching it, and Andrew Hardman is right there on the back of Joey Haynes, and sometimes that's exactly the only thing that you can do is go up there, apply the pressure, and hopefully the variables that you are introducing cause a mistake out of the leader.
Yeah, I think that's his best hope right now. If this is his most, if he's really chucking it into it and can't seem to catch him, is meanwhile catching the likes of Federico. That's Nick Horvath, who was a part of that opening incident back there. Had his way off and has collected himself up to 13th. Nope, not going to make it through this section of corners as the car slides around, but Federico looks like he has trouble trying to get the throttle down out of Le Mans. Here comes Horvath down to the inside. He's got the inside, but he's going to have to try and outbrake him into the dangerous Sunset Bend. And he goes a little bit deeper, but is he going to make the corner? He goes wide. He's a little hot, and coming right back at him, Federico cuts underneath.
A great over-under move, but this is actually going to put Nick Horvath in the better position heading into turn 1. Federico slightly ahead. They're going to go 2 wide through turn 1. Another over-under from Federico. See if he can get it late on the brakes going into turn 3 here.
He's got a nose in. Oh, and that braking that you were talking about has bit Horvath. That car did not want to settle down. Thankfully, he kept it from flying off course.
Yeah, really good battle there, all for that kind of 10th, 11th place there. Always great to see battles throughout the entire field. Doesn't matter if you're battling for the lead or a little bit further back.
Oh, no, that's Broomhead. Broomhead has gone off at the hairpin. I'm not sure if this was on his own or with some help, but his great work has been undone, and he's back down to 10th. There's no regridding from here, so finishing P10's really not going to do him much good. Oh, that was a hard hit into the concrete, too.
Unfortunate, yeah, we're catching this replay coming out of the hairpin. See exactly what happens, and it just looks like wheel spin. We mentioned how cool these cars are. They have over 400 horsepower. You put that throttle down, it'll spin up those rear tires and lose traction just like that.
400 horsepower and not a lot of weight. And another replay there of Cedric getting it wrong in turn 1, hitting the inside wall, which is not quite as common, at least in that fashion. So he gets it back facing forward, but Cedric is still down in 16th, which, yeah, he started 17th for this last one, so very similar to where he was in the last race. Back to the battle for the lead. Not as much under threat what we saw from third place in the early stages in the sprint race. Joseph Yang's about a second and a half behind, so he's got some ground to make up to them. Not impossible, mind you, but he's probably not as big of a concern to these two as it sits currently.
I think that Scott Bedard will probably be hounding the back of Joseph Yang in the next few laps, but I actually think our second place runner, Andrew Hardman, is a little bit faster this race than he was in the sprint. I know that we're kind of still getting going here. It's still approaching halfway, but certainly seems like he's been able to hold a closer gap than our sprint race.
Yeah, that's a good point. He is kind of putting a little bit more pressure on the 99 in this one, and maybe that's exactly what he needs to do here, is just try and keep him distracted throughout. See if he can look away from those get him to look away from his brake markers at some point and just miss it by a couple feet and overshoot a corner. So far, it hasn't been able to do that, but like you said, pit stops could be underway pretty soon because we're almost halfway there, and drivers will need to duck in and take their fuel. We're going to look a little bit farther back. This is the battle, I believe, between Keith Carter and Christian Jasper. So this is for 6th.
Yeah, and Christian Jasper actually just made a move around Keith Carter there. I know that Keith Carter in that very brightly colored yellow and blue green machine, kind of like a chameleon tiger out there, had some problems in the sprint race, but looks to be going much better here in the feature.
Yeah, he only managed to 15th last time, and now all the way up to 7th. He's spying potentially 6th from Christian. Not going to have the opportunity into the final turn this time, but he certainly looks pretty good under braking. As the car wants to break loose, though, coming off the turn, and all that gained time goes away.
Turn 17. The home of the bumps of Sebring. No matter how you approach that corner, you think you got it down, it never works out the same way twice.
Yeah, no, it is just the bane of my existence on this track. I never feel like I get the most out of it. Hardman, we look from his perspective, looking over the shoulder of the number 3. Not close enough this time. But once again, under braking, gains quite a bit. Does make the apex, so he wasn't overshooting it. Certainly seems to be a little bit better than his rival on the binders, coming into some of these slower corners. I see, Broomhead has been in and comes back out. I think that was a scheduled stop. And for Durko, looks like he is doing the same. So I think we've had our first 2 cars take their fuel.
And Joe, looking back on race 1, if I remember correctly, there was maybe 1 or 2 cars that pitted too early and actually had to come back in and take that second stop. If we remember, race 1 was 15 minutes long. We know these cars can make it 15 minutes on fuel. How much further than that, I don't know.
We'll get the answer pretty soon, I think. And look at that battle behind our top 2. That's been getting very close between Yang and Bedard. We're going to ride on board with Scott now, as the Atomic Racing driver continues to hound the 55, trying to weave back and forth a little bit to break that slipstream. Not doing a whole lot of good because he still gains on him, does the 83. Will any of this quartet pit in this time to the inside of Yang? Neither of them are pitting, but what a run through the corner there from the 83. He's going to be on the outside into turn 1. It'll have to be a real hang tough moment to get this done.
Looks like he is going to hang it out around the outside of Joseph Yang in turn 1, and Scott Bedard up to position number 3. That was a power move, but it was all set up from turn 17.
Fantastic work by Scott Bedard. Still trying to make it a 2 back-to-back third place finishes. Salmon had a problem there coming through Sunset Bend. Let's get a replay, see if we can pick this one apart. He's all by himself, and the rear just says, I can't do that anymore.
I think it's a little bit of a common problem with this car, is maybe a little bit too much rear brake bias, or combine that with the bumps and the low ride height. It's a very twitchy car, and oh my goodness, great reaction from Nick Horvath.
Yeah, absolutely. He had inches to spare on that one, and it's not easy to change direction through that corner. So great job there by the McDonald's driver. Meanwhile, Yang in fourth, watches as Bedard pulls away a little bit. Bedard finished third in the sprint and is currently sitting third, but we have to remember, he set the pole for the sprint race. He was the fastest driver in that 20-minute qualifying session, and he has the fastest lap right now. So I wonder if Bedard still is the quickest driver out there. He just hasn't been keeping the mistakes out enough to really show it.
I'm going to agree with you, Joe. I think that we've seen Scott Bedard be a very aggressive driver. Aggressiveness usually leads to a very fast lap time. It can lead to extreme amounts of success, but you have to reel in that aggression and use it when you can.
He's got 2 seconds to catch up to Hardman, and about 3 seconds to catch Haynes here. So a little ways to go, but still plenty of race to do so. And as you watch that 55 of Joseph Yang unfortunately take the first corner a little wide, he is now certainly going to lose that slipstream to Scott Bedard. Everybody's been a little prone to mistakes. Now Spencer Todd from Evolve SimSport brings his 118 in pit lane. Horvath follows him in, and we're about 16 minutes into this race now. So yeah, we're starting to see more and more drivers figure this is where, as far as they can go. How far can everybody else go? Because that will give us a hint on whether or not Broomhead or who's the other one that pitted earlier? Oh, we lost Federico. He didn't come back out. Excuse me.
Yeah, it looks like really, Joe, kind of from 10th place on back are starting to do their pit stops. And what I'm seeing in terms of strategy, oh no, looks like Joseph Yang just had another issue on the racetrack. Looks like coming out of the hairpin. I'm going to bet it was getting on the throttle too soon and having wheel spin. We're going to catch a replay of this here. Looks like, yeah, once again, just low in the gears, on the throttle. Oh, wheel spin. Oh, no, hardened. That's a concrete wall. That could produce damage on that race car of Joseph Yang. But getting back to my original point, the strategy, it looks like these competitors are splitting it halfway down the middle. They just passed halfway in the race. Come in, get your pit stop done.
These two went by Joseph Yang, who hit the corner of his car, too. Not only just a hard hit, I wonder if the suspension got too much of that, and he might be off pace. But these two now vying for 6th position, Carter versus Arsenault. And Patrick, who started from 7th position, is actually exactly where he was when he started this race, interestingly. And the 83 is in. That's Bedard.
Bedard is in. He's the first of our top 3 to take this pit stop. And one thing to note, stop on your marks. Don't overshoot your box here. This is so important here as Bedard looks like he gets it stopped perfectly. And that's important for your lap time.
Patrick is going to follow him in. And Ohion has been in for some time, so I don't think he is on a scheduled stop. I think he is getting repairs done. Had a problem. Oh, Keith Carter seems to have spun. What happened to Keith Carter? He's going to lose a spot to Yang and Jasper.
It was just a self spin, Joe. I was watching him, and looks like he just got in a little bit too deep going into turn 3. Maybe the rear end locks up again, and around the car goes.
And that was down through, it looks like, Collier. He's got to be grateful that nobody was following him, because that's it's a very tough spot.
He was out in the marbles, too. He was just in a dirty, slippery part of the racetrack.
Yeah, good job keeping it out of the barriers. There's very little runoff in that portion. And he just picks it back up and keeps it going. So the spoils seem to be going to those who make the fewest mistakes out there. And so far in this race, Haynes and Hardman have made precious few. But knock on wood on that one, because they're not out of the woods yet, certainly. And they also haven't pitted yet. So it does seem like you can go a decent distance. I think those first two pitters are probably safe at this point.
Agreed. They're definitely safe. And I'm watching our leaders. Looks like both of our front two, Joey Haynes and Hardman here, entering pit road. Once again, crucial. Stop on your box. Don't overshoot it.
All right, so Bedard's been out running in clean air from here. Not sure how much time he'll have gained in about 2 laps. But we'll see if he's any closer now that, yeah, I think this is everybody coming in, because it looks like 3rd and 4th, our pitting gang is in. I think Keith Carter, yeah, he's motioning towards the pit lane. And in and out, Joey Haynes is going to be ahead of Hardman. So yeah, Hardman not able to jump him in the pit stops, unfortunately. Where is Bedard? Bedard's not going to be any closer to them. He is well behind.
I actually think that Bedard lost time in that pit stop cycle, and Joey Haynes and Andrew Hardman probably about equal from what I see.
Yeah, it's looking at about 5 seconds. Remember, it was 2 before, so it did not work out in the end for him. And now it's even farther apart between Hardman and Haynes, who Hardman actually had a quicker stop, but seems to have lost time. So that's a bit bizarre on that front. Well, we'll see if he can catch him back up, because he's still got those 10 minutes left on the clock. But I can report that everybody has now made their scheduled stop and should be able to get to the end from here. We continue to watch the 99 down through the middle of the track and switch over to Broomhead.
Broomhead is getting around Joseph Yang here for the 8th place position. Hard onto the brakes, going into the hairpin. I gotta think that Joseph Yang is carrying a little bit of damage still from that hard contact that we saw in that same corner.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he had a bit of a long stop, so I wonder if he maybe tried to get a little bit of it repaired while he sat in pit lane and then took off once he figured he had it worked on enough. Watching from Spencer Todd, trying to chase on Christian Jasper for a top 5 on this one. Looking mighty fast through this portion, as just since we've jumped on board, he's gained quite a bit, and in fact, he's going to go by as Jasper loses traction down through Jean Debian.
Really unfortunate for Christian Jasper, because Patrick Arsenault is going to move his way through as well, and Jasper started the race in 13th position. He had made his way all the way up into the top 5. Unfortunate mistake here.
Wow, it just went on him.
Yeah, Joe, I'm gonna jump in here. We're seeing so many problems with these cars on the brakes, and it's also having to do with the racetrack and the bumps. If I'm on the box, I'm telling my driver, crank that brake bias forward. It might make you slower, but it's gonna make the car stable.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, I mean, usually you see some signs about a car going, but that one just, it was like it just kind of had a mind of its own and it was gone. So it's kind of amazing to see it disappear like that. Meanwhile, Hardman versus Haynes is having no such trouble, but now it's down to 7 minutes to go. It has been cut down. Hardman's got it to 0.7 of a second, so he is pushing, but these two look incredibly evenly matched.
I'm looking at their fast lap. Only 200s, I'm sorry, 700 separate. 154.3, 154.3 fast lap between both of our leaders. There's not much separating those two.
That is just as close as it gets. So that probably explains why we've been seeing Andrew kind of stuck here. I think he's given it everything right now, but there's just not enough for him to overtake Haynes, just because he can catch him ever so slowly, but just it doesn't have enough over him pace-wise to try and really get aggressive and make the move. And to Joey's credit, to Haynes's credit, he's not really making the mistakes that Andrew needs to open the door.
No, but here's a variable introduced right here. Robert Burgess, a lapped car on the exit of turn 17. I don't think he's going to be a factor, but this is always interesting when leaders come up on a lapped car.
He's staying to the side, so he's doing pretty good right now. Robert's experienced driver. Whoa, he actually is going to go take a spin on the outside. He just he doesn't hit anything, thankfully, but definitely was out in the marbles there and maybe didn't anticipate that one. Thankfully, it did not interrupt this fight, but I think you're right. I think it helped out Hardman. He's now down to 0.3 of a second.
Oh, and really loose moment for Joey Haynes. This is going to open the door for Andrew Hardman coming down this bending straightaway into a possible braking passing zone, but Joey Haynes has the inside. We're going to see what happens. Hardman really deep on the brakes. They're going to go side by side through the hairpin. Haynes is going to hang on to the position.
I spoke too soon. I shouldn't have said anything about Haynes not making mistakes, because there we go right there. As soon as it happened, Hardman was on it, but he was not able to capitalize. Joey playing a successful defense for now. We hop on board with Hardman, looking forward to the 99 yet again, but now he's gotten a taste of it. Now he can see cracks in the armor.
We were noticing the brake lockup with the rear of the car. We've also seen a couple cars really get on the gas and have that wheel spin that almost caught our leader Joey Haynes out. I'm sure his heart is in his throat right now.
Both of these drivers probably really having heart palpitations out there, because this has got to be thrilling stuff. They already had a real nail biter in the sprint race, and in the feature it just picked up exactly where it left off. And finally they're getting opportunities as we watch forward and now look back from Joey Haynes underneath the rear wing. Can't quite get close enough for a look, but he's still dodging around, trying to make sure that he can distract Joey when he needs it.
Looks like he's got a really good exit out of turn 17. Not enough to get up alongside going into turn 1, but I think Andrew Hardman has a lot of confidence. You see him poking the nose down, filling the mirror of our leader, Joey Haynes. He's saying, hey, bud, I'm here. Let's go racing.
Up into turn 3. Whoa! Big gains there from Hardman into the braking that time, as we're getting some cloud cover, and that has actually cooled down the track significantly. It's 113, but unfortunately Andrew might be pushing a little bit too hard for whatever grip he might be gaining, because he had his own mistake in turn 5 this time.
The shade has just come over this racetrack. Maybe a cloud in the air and a little bit of lockup from our leader, Joey Haynes. Haven't seen that much from him in the feature, a little bit in the sprint, but look at this. Hardman now with the potential opportunity. He could take it really deep in the brakes here. Thinks better of it this time.
Yeah, but he's still trying to make sure that he's still there in the head of Joey Haynes pretty much every single opportunity. Try and make him doubt whether or not Andrew's going to go for it at any moment as they come out of Tower Corner. This is another high-speed section up through Bishop. These cars glued to the track through here as they whip through this double apex left-hander and into a quick braking zone in Jean Dembienne. Only 3 minutes left. When they cross the line, it's going to be 2 to go.
Really good exit actually from both of our competitors. I don't think that Hardman's going to be close enough to make a move down into turn 17, but something I've been noticing the last couple laps, he's got a great exit out of 17, which tends to set him up really well into 1.
Through the final corner as they bound over the bumps and across the line. There you go, 2 to go as they cross now. Popsicle sticks for the pair, and they're 5 seconds ahead of Bedard. So whatever pace the 83 had, it's not being unleashed currently. He still is not within range to make this a 3-way battle as they try and position themselves to fend off any attacks. Ooh, cars really sliding around now as they've abused these tires all race long, and they're wringing the last little bits out of them.
Great line from Joey Haynes, our leader, through that 3-4-5 complex. Really got the slingshot out onto the straightaway. Always important to manage yourself on the brakes here. We've seen some lockups out of our leader, and actually looks like Hardman was the one that was in really deep that time, but both once again get a great equal exit.
I like what I'm seeing, though. Hardman's leaving nothing on the table. He's not going to just cruise home to back-to-back second places. He wants the win over Joey Haynes. He knows this is worth more points than the sprint, so if he beats him, he's going to outscore him for this week. But to do that, he's got to finish ahead, and right now he does not have that track position, and the passing opportunities are slipping away here.
They are slipping away. There's only about a lap and a half left for all of these competitors out there on the racetrack, and this is the closest Andrew Hardman has been. This is one of the slipperiest areas of the racetrack coming out of turn 16. This next right-hander is crucial coming out onto the back straightaway. We'll see if our leader gets a good run. They both get a good run, but Hardman now officially in the draft of our leader.
He's about 2/10 behind, so there's your measure. He shows himself, comes back to the racing line as they steer down into Sunset Bend. Doesn't look like he gains a whole lot. In fact, it's up to 3/10 on their entry into there. White flag is out for the pair of them. 1 to go to decide the winner, and it may have been decided last time in the sprint race that Haynes was the quicker one. This is different circumstances. Does Hardman have anything left in the tank?
He's very close, approaching turn 3 right here. He's not going to make the move. He knows that's not a great opportunity, but through this 3-4-5 complex, this is so technical. Don't step a wheel wrong. Get on the gas nice and easy and head down towards the hairpin for the last time.
That didn't look like a good exit for the 3 car. He drops back to 4/10 now. Haynes getting himself a little bit of breathing room. Maybe able to relax just slightly. He knows he's got to keep the pace up. But if he doesn't have to defend, that means he can focus on what he himself is doing.
I've really been impressed with both of these competitors, and they both have real-world experience, whether it's open-wheel cars or go-karts, and I think it's definitely showing in this battle that we're having here. No mistakes being made by either competitor.
Down into the braking of Tower this time. Hardman makes up the gap once again, and this is where he's got to really attack. In fact, that looked excellent. He's going to be less than 2/10 of a second. Jean Demienne is a hard place to pass, though. Does he try it here? Does he save it for later? He shows himself, but oh no, he goes in too hot and he loses control. He's off the course, and that's going to be it, and that's even going to be second place gone as Bedard streams by, and Joey Haynes has survived the onslaught in both the sprint and the feature, and is able to cruise to the victory here as he comes up with one final corner. How about that? The man of steel nerves today for Joey Haynes as the 99 exits the final corner and gets back-to-back wins in the sprint and the feature here at Sebring.
What a race, both of them for Joey Haynes, taking home both checkered flags. Great racing tonight. Looks like Scott Bedard, like you said, coming home in the second with Andrew Hardman with that spin, relegating him down to 3rd place.
He's got to be so gutted. Didn't even get to take the second home from there. Spencer Todd 4th. Bedard's loving that because he gets an easy 2nd place there, even though it isn't a win. As Yang, who somehow, despite that hard hit, is able to drive this car home. And is it going to be ahead or behind Michael Broomhead? It's going to be behind, but that'll get him 9th place. As Doherty, you remember, started from, or finished 9th last time, is going to, well, I thought he was going to finish 10th. Oh my goodness, he's off track. And that's Keith Carter going by and Nick Horvath. So no, he's not going to finish above where he was in that previous sprint race. He lost it on the last lap.
It's never over until you cross that start-finish line. I can tell you of countless times that things have happened on the last lap, whether it be spins, running out of fuel. You never give up until you see that checkered flag.
Yeah, and credit to Keith Carter on that one. He's going to wind up 5th after finishing 15th last time. Or excuse me, wind up 10th after finishing 15th last time. So he had a big gain. Horvath is going to wind up 11th, and Doherty has to settle for 12th. We'll come back in a moment here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. We'll have the unofficial results as well as driver interviews here shortly.
everyone. I'm going to ride around the world.
I'm Mick Claridge, and I'm going to ride around the world on my bike.
My son, he gave me advice at the start of this ride, and he looked at me and just said, "Dad, don't be a moron."
Let me do my animal signal to gain their respect. How's it going, Sally? Yeah, I'm alright, Mick. How's it going? Worse than that bit in Lord of the Rings where they go into the top and the spiders in the tunnel. I'm just hoping there's a spider at the top of this one to kill me.
Freezing.
And I failed. I moroned up the ride.
Welcome back to Sebring, round 2 of the Radical Canada Cup Winter Series. Seeing Joey Haynes go back-to-back, victory in the sprint, victory in the feature. Scott Bedard followed him home in second in the feature, and Andrew Hardman wound up only third in the end. He was fighting for that win all the way to the final lap. Spencer Todd was P4, followed by Arsenault in 5th. Christian Jasper climbed from 13th to 6th today, and similarly, Ben Walid went from 14th to 7th. Michael Broomhead finished 8th out there as Joseph Yang was 9th, and Keith Carter got his position right at the end and finished 10th.
Nick Horvath with definitely an up and down day, finishes in the 11th spot there, followed up with James Doherty in the 61 machine, Daniel Salmon in the 13th position, James Carter 14th, and Robert Burgess rounding out the top 15. Looks like in the 16th spot, Cedric Ohayon, followed up with Alex Federico. Dave Peterson in the 18th spot, Steven Sutherland in 19th, and then of the all 20 cars, Mark Boyd rounded out the field there.
And we've got our winner of both races ready to talk to us after locking out victory. Joey, congratulations. You did the double, but you had some immense pressure for both of them. How did you withstand that?
That was probably one of the hardest races I've had to run so far. Kudos to Andrew Hardman. That was some great racing. He was probably within a half a second of me, I think, pretty much both races. And up until the end there, I thought maybe he might get a shot in the final corner, but I saw him slide wide, and it was a sigh of relief for sure. That was awesome racing.
Now, as we watch your start to the race, that was something we'll get to. Actually, let's talk about it now since we're watching it. Because my goodness, slicing through all that, it must have seemed so unreal in that situation. How much of that was you kind of being cognizant of where to position your car, and how much of it was sheer luck?
I mean, I think the part we're looking at right now, that was more car positioning. That was just trying to make sure I didn't have anyone too close around me, leave some space. But this next part that we're about to watch, coming into this corner here, this is pure luck. I don't know how this worked out. I'm watching the replay right now on your guys' thing, and I definitely did a little bit of a send there to the inside, but watching all those cars just disappear off in front of me like that, I was like, this isn't real. This is... It looked like one of those things you see on the iRacing top 10 reels, right?
Well, maybe we should send that one in, save the replay there.
I hope you do.
Well, man, it was a fantastic piece of racecraft that got you back up to the lead. But the other thing that I wanted to get to before we saw that replay come up is you've got experience with karting in the real world. Have you gotten to drive this SR10 in the real world? And regardless, how does karting compare to these things? Because they do look like kind of just monstrously overpowered go-karts.
I mean, so I haven't gotten to drive an SR10 in the real world. I would love the opportunity at some point for sure. But I've driven a few open wheel cars back in the day, and I still, dabble in karting. So there's a lot of similarities that really can be drawn between the two. It's a lot about learning how to set yourself up for the entry of the corner and making sure that no matter what, that's got to be correct, because your exit is just going to suffer. And, that's even Andrew and I were talking in the radical chat there. And he said, coming out of the corners, I just couldn't get you. He said, going into them, I was a bit deeper. I was able to gain a little bit of time, but then every single lap, the way you were able to accelerate out was what made the difference. And I could see it in the final too. And yeah, it's all about that slow in, fast out, and really learning those basic fundamentals from the karts for sure.
Well, you put it to fantastic use here today. Congratulations on back-to-back wins. Will we see you back for the next round?
Absolutely. I can't wait for the next one. It's going to be a blast. I think it's Brands Hatch, right? It's actually one of my personal favorites.
It is indeed. Congratulations. That was Joey Haynes, your winner in both the sprint and the feature. Up next, I do believe we have Hardman ready to talk to Joey Atterbury.
Looks like I'm standing by here with Andrew Hartman, ultimately the third place finisher tonight in the feature race, taking home second place in the sprint. Congratulations on both of those finishes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was a blast to race with Joey for both the sprint and the feature. That's kind of what this league is about, is just close racing, and the inverted grid makes it a little bit more interesting for the second part, but that was just a blast. And yeah, my hat's off to Joey for driving a perfect race.
Talk to us a little bit more about the racing that we saw all night from you and Joey Haynes. It seemed like you were underneath the back bumper, or really underneath the rear wing of that 99 machine, but couldn't find a way around. What did you need? What were you missing that you needed to get around our leader?
I think maybe just a bit of practice. I jumped into this race a little bit late, but ultimately I think it was just his corner exits were so good that I could never get as good of a run as I needed to get alongside of him. And he made no mistakes, so any sort of little opportunities I had were firmly shut. So just I can say I can get better, but I think ultimately Joey was perfect today. So good job to him.
Well, hats off to you being a very good competitor and saying such nice things about your own competitors out there. And something that's really cool about this series specifically is it has a lot of real world competitors. And I'm noticing you've done a lot of RC car racing in your past history. Do you able to transfer any of that knowledge over into the sim here?
Yeah, you know what? That's a really good question. I think that in a way I can maybe get away with feeling less of the car. Like, I think a lot of real race car drivers, their complaint with sim racing is that they can't feel the sort of the way the car feels in the seat of their pants. And having come from the RC world, I had no feeling with my hands or my fingers or whatever. So I was able to drive the car just purely on looks, and maybe that translates into sim racing. I'm not really sure, but certainly an interesting thing to think about.
Well, that's a great perspective there, and always interesting to hear the different worlds of racing. And once again, congratulations on ultimately the third place finish here tonight. And looking forward, I believe it's Brands Hatch next. How's your confidence going into that one?
Brands is one of my favorite tracks, so yeah, definitely looking forward to that. And it's, I guess, the home away from home from my team, Britannia. So looking forward to that for sure.
Awesome. Well, like I said, congratulations on the second place sprint and third place feature finish here tonight, Andrew.
Thanks so much.
And I think that's going to, I think maybe we have one more lurking around, Joe. I'm not sure. Do we have one more here?
We do. We have Patty Arsenault. Mavericks joined us, but it was a fourth and a fifth, so not bad. But, I mean, how do you feel about it? Are you satisfied with the results today? You feel like there was more for you?
For sure, there's always more, but with the second race, with the nice little start of my teammate, I can't be much more happier with the my P5. And with the first race, I don't know what happened, maybe a traffic jam or a red light, but I skipped maybe 4, 5, 6 people. And I was pretty lucky and pretty happy with my P4 and P5 for sure.
You came into this race with the lead in the points because of the consistent finishes that you had, despite not getting the win back at Mosport. So this consistency of the fourth and the fifth, I have to imagine, will still at least not hurt you too badly. So what's the goal from here? Would you like to try and keep that points lead and take home the championship, or do you not think about those sort of things?
I will not lie. For sure, it's a one goal, but my first goal it's the team, my team points, and the team championship. But for sure, I don't mean to win any race. I just want to be consistent every race. And P5, P4, P3, it's my go-to goal every race. And let's hope for a nice finish at Brands Hatch too.
Well, I'm sure Joey here can attest to you that consistency wins championships. And you mentioned Brands Hatch being up next. That's one that's going to share some similarities to what we saw at Mosport. And since you got a second place at Mosport, I mean, how do you like your odds heading there?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite course too, because even Mosport, it's a really technical, very bumpy. And I liked it. And Brands Hatch, it's maybe my second favorite one. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm just hoping for to be able to race it too.
Well, we hope to see you there again. Nicely done with consistent finishes today, and look forward to getting to talk to you more this season.
Yes, thank you guys.
That was Patrick Arsenault, and he finished 4th in the sprint today, 5th in the feature. Well, that's going to wrap us up. And once again, we want to give a big thank you to Radical Cup Canada for helping bring this thing to life, but also a thanks to the team today, Joey, Ryan, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and our merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment on GSRC. As we said, the next race, Brands Hatch, will be Friday, January 6th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to check out our other broadcasts listed here, but until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.